and welcome to Dusty Book Sniffers. Today is Friday Classics, and today I'm going to talk about the things that I have read during the month of October. That were short stories from the likes of Elizabeth Gaskell and also Edgar Poe as well. And yeah, so I am on the road today, so you're going to get the steering wheel coming in and out and me coming in and out of vision. I should be on the highway in just a moment, and so for there it will be a little bit straighter. All right, so hopefully you can hear me okay. I've had a bit of a hectic week and I haven't been able to record at home because I've had a car breakdown. I've been away at retreat. It's just been all happening. And now I'm heading back down to Brisbane. Fingers crossed that my car is not going to break down. And yeah, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the short stories that I read. Now, most of these, come on, hurry up. That's all right. Yes, that's right. Yes, good. A little bit of gentle road rage there. Just get a move on, people. I'm in a hurry. No, I'm not. All right, so I'm not going to be looking at the camera, obviously. I'm going to be watching the road, but you get the general idea. All right, so basically I managed to read several short stories. Now, I'm going to talk about them all here in one spot. I'm not going to break them up because, as I said, they are short stories. And I'm going to start with Edgar Allan Poe. I've never read anything of his before, and anything that's really pushed at school or anything like that, I have just avoided like a plague. I haven't read any of his poetry. I don't really know much about him or anything like that. But when I looked up on Google for things to read, these popped up basically. So I think they were actually on a top 100, a top 50 list, I think, of authors to read. And so I'll have to verify that, and I'll leave the link down below for where you can find that list. And so I pulled a few of these things off this list. And so basically the first one that I read was The Fall of the House of Usher. It was a short story that was published back in 1836. Just having a quick look without my glasses off to the side of me. Sorry, 1839. Sorry, I can't see with these sunglasses on. So yeah, it was published back then. It's just a short story. I listened to this both. Well, actually, I read and also listened to it. And it was just following the story of, actually, we don't know who the person is. You're not told who the person is. So basically the narrator has received a letter from his friend saying, come and visit him. He's ill of health and all that sort of stuff. And when he arrives, he notices that this house is super creepy and all that goes with it. These are all sort of creepy gothic tales that I've read for the month of October, being spooky reads month. Anyway, basically he ends up at the house, and his friend is quite ill, looks very ill, and he's also got a sister there that turns out to be a twin sister, and she doesn't even recognize anybody. She just sort of strolls through the house and isn't really paying attention, didn't even acknowledge the fact that he is there, and all that sort of stuff. The one thing that the narrator noticed was how creepy the house was, and yeah. So anyway, the doctors come and see the sister and all that sort of stuff, and basically, it was just a really weird story. It goes on from there. The one thing that really struck me was how it ended, and I don't want to give it away if you haven't read it before, but I'm not 100% sure whether the sister was a spectre or not. Like, I sort of think I missed something in the story. I don't know. Or that she was maybe buried alive. Like, I don't know. Like, it was really, really weird. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I enjoyed reading it. I gave it a 3-star rating. As I said, it was the first time that I've ever read anything by him. So I was a little bit not sure whether I was going to like it or not. Am I going to read anything else? Well, I did. I ended up putting two books onto my, or the short stories. Okay, so the next one that I'm going to talk about is The Black Cat, and this is a story of revenge. Now, I am going to straight up tell you that I gave this a 3.5-star rating, but it does have some animal cruelty in it, and if you do not like reading about it, this story is definitely not for you. It is a gothic tale. Again, it is by Edgar Allan Poe. Again, this was on the list, and I'm pretty sure it was on the list, or maybe I just picked it out of the book. So anyway, it is telling, as the title says, it is a story of a black cat, but it's not the cat telling the story. It is actually the narrator who is in jail at the moment, and basically we know that first off. And so basically it starts out really lovely and telling you how he has an affinity for animals and how his parents helped him with that, and how he met his beautiful bride and she had an affinity with animals, and they, you know, were living together and they had a lot of animals and they just loved them. And basically it then goes on him telling the story about his best friend, the cat, and how they were always together and it was just lovely. But then it starts to take a dark turn, and he starts to talk about him starting to drink and all of that sort of stuff. So he's basically telling you how he became a not nice person. He started drinking quite heavily, and that affected his mood, and he became very melancholy, and he became quite abusive towards his wife. And yeah, and it just sort of touches on all of that, and then it goes on and it starts talking about, you know, the cat, how it followed him, and how he started to become extra moody and all that sort of stuff, and started taking it out on the cat. I'm not going to go into detail about what happened in the book, but I will say that it was definitely a shock and awe moment. Not scared me, but like just shocked me that it just took that sharp turn. Anyway, and then it goes on a little bit further on how he is, you know, he is remorseful of what he'd done and all that sort of stuff. But then it takes another turn, and yeah, and it goes on from there. Subsequently, I will say that the cat did get revenge. And that's all I'm going to say. But it is an interesting story to read. It was a very interesting story of how it ebbed and flowed. And it was a very interesting story in the fact that it covered animal cruelty, revenge, alcoholism, domestic abuse in such a short story. I can't look at my book right now to tell you how many pages, so I'll just put that up along the bottom of how many pages and when it was published. But yeah, it was a very interesting read. I really enjoyed the fact that it took all these sharp turns and covered so many different topics. Like, it wasn't in depth, it's a short story, so obviously it's not going to go into super in depth, but it was very quick, fast paced, and it moved from one section to the other. And so I have given it 3.5 stars. I don't think it would have been the story it is of 3.5 stars if it didn't have the animal cruelty in it. I will say that, because that really set the premise of the cat getting revenge. So that is The Black Cat, 3.5 stars rating from me. And as I said, all the stuff was along the bottom of when it was published, how many pages and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so the next one is called, and this is the cover of it, and I'll put that in, is another Edgar Allan Poe. And it is Arthur Gordon Pym. It's the journey of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. And this is a story of misadventure. Now, I believe that this is the only novel that he has written. I could be completely wrong on that. As I said, I'm very new to Edgar Poe. I mean, I've heard of him and I know of him. I mean, if you've watched The Gilmore Girls, you know of him. If you've watched anything, you know of him, and whatnot. But I have just tried to avoid anything that involves pressure from education to read that. And probably really stupid of me to do that, because obviously I've been missing out on a lot of books, but I'm playing catch up. So anyway, onto this story. As I said, it is following the story of Arthur Gordon Pym, and he is I didn't really know what to make of this story, actually. So I'm just going to, there's not going to be any spoilers, but there sort of might be slight spoilers because it is following the adventures of this guy. And to talk about the book, I sort of got to cover those adventures. So basically, as I said, it is a book of misadventure. Again, I will put how many pages down below, when it was published and all that sort of stuff. Nothing like multitasking, is there, people? So anyway, basically, it's following the story of this young boy and his friend, and he stows away on, I believe it is his friend's father's whaling ship, and he stows away on that, and basically the story goes on from there. And he, I can't even remember how many times this guy nearly died, but he covers everything from being stowing away to getting stuck in the hull of the ship. And then there's mutiny on board, and then there's cannibalism, and then there's savages. And this is the terminology that they use in the book. The savages on this island. You know, he's rescued. He's gone through violent hurricanes. He's almost dying of like it all happened. Okay, and then. The only thing I will say, like, it was great. I really was invested in the story. I was keen to find out what else could actually happen to this guy. I've given this one actually a 3-star, 3.5-star rating. I couldn't decide, mainly because I felt that the story abruptly finished. And it wasn't even, it was a pretty unreliable narrator, I will say. Because it felt like it was all lies. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't 100% sure whether it was him telling the story. I know that towards the end it wasn't him telling the story, but I'm not 100% sure whether he survived, whether he died. It was sort of all up in the air. I just really didn't know what happened. And so that's why I've marked it down a bit. But it was definitely a really good read. I thoroughly enjoyed the read. It wasn't so much a spooky read as opposed to a misadventure. It was on this list of, you know, people that you should read. And so I picked it not knowing really what the stories were about when I went into them. So it sort of made it a bit hard to find out whether it was spooky or not. But it was definitely adventurous. It was definitely kept you on the edge of your seat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It might not be everybody's cup of tea. There is some questionable language in there referring to islanders as savages and stuff like that. If you don't like that sort of thing, well, that it is only one little section of the book. It's not sporadic throughout. But you have to take into account that you're reading this through your lens now, not through the lens in which it was written. So just be aware that it was written back in the 1800s, and obviously language of that day is entirely different of language of our today. So just know that when you go into reading it, that there is some questionable language that you may find jarring and you may not like, but just remember that that is because you're reading it through your lens today, not through his lens when he wrote it. All right, so that is all that I have read from Mr. Poe. Am I going to read any more? Probably. I will probably look at a few more of his stories. I haven't read any of his poetry or anything like that, or delved too far into it. I don't really know much about him, except he was American, right? That's all I think I really know about him. And I have just tried to avoid you know, learning anything about them, and just trying to go into it blind, so I make my own judgment, not someone else's preconceived ideas of what it should be about. And that's how I go into most of my classics. All right, so now I'm going to cut to the bookshop that I found and show you a couple of pictures of that. I am going to do a haul video separate to that when I get back home after doing all the things that I need to do this week. That'll probably come next week or the week after. I don't know when it's going to go up. But yeah, so I'm going to cut to that and just show you some of the footage. There's not a great deal of footage because he was really, really not happy with me filming in there. So I've just got a little bit here and there. Okay, so it is a treasure trove. I managed to get finish off a collection of my books and whatnot, and pick up some classics that I can mark up. And the thing is, if I don't mark them up, I can actually return them and swap them out for something else. I was a little bit disappointed that there was no, I was looking for some Elizabeth Gaskell, and I was also looking for some more from George Eliot, but didn't have anything there. But I will go into more detail about what I got from the bookstore, and I'm planning on visiting a couple more in the next couple of months, so you'll have to keep an eye out for that. Okay, so the next book that I read was by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I have never read anything by her, and I didn't even really know that she exists, and most people that I talk to don't really know much about her either. And I come across her through Katie from Books and Things, and she's just so passionate about Elizabeth Gaskell when she talks, and also Kate Howe, I think it is. She is also very passionate about when she talks about her. And I'm like, hey, if these women are talking about her with so much passion and all the rest of it, she is definitely worth a read. So this book was actually on this list as well. So I got hold of that through Kindle, and it was also available on Audible for free. So I thought, why not? I'll listen to it. So I have been doing a lot of driving, so I have been predominantly listening to this book, and I'm really looking forward to actually getting my physical copy of this, because I want to reread these stories for sure. So I have started from the beginning and went through I've got a couple more stories to go. My favourite story in it was Lois the Witch. Excuse me. A truck just went past and dust came in. Anyway, so yeah, there's several stories in here. I believe there's 12 all up in this short story collection. And some are reasonably short, some are quite lengthy, a few chapters. The audiobook goes for 14 or 15 hours, so there are some really lengthy stories in these ones. So I guess you would call them novellas, perhaps, as opposed to short stories. I thoroughly have been enjoying it and listening to it as I've been driving along. The first one starts out where it's talking about disappearances and stuff like that, and I just love the way she writes. I'm just really, really invested in the stories as well, want to know where they're going. My favourite story, as I said, is Lois the Witch. That, I think, really, really struck home with me, because, you know, I'm looking through it through my lens, and obviously she was looking through it through her lens, because this was written in the Victorian era. And so basically she is talking about a young girl back in Salem, and the hysteria behind all that sort of thing. That was the feeling that I got from it, that she was sort of, you know, she's telling a story, but she was looking through it through her lens. And so I was listening to it, and now that I know, like, you know, the history of the Salem witch trials and all that sort of stuff, and how hysteria played into it, and so many people were falsely accused, and well, everybody was falsely accused. So yeah, so basically I was really invested in this story. I absolutely loved it. I loved how it played out. It was so sad as well, and I wanted to reread it again, but I also want to keep listening to her stories. So I am in the car again, as you can see, as you know, and so once I'm finished doing all this recording, I'm going to get back into it. So I am just going to say not too much more about this one. It was mostly about the Edgar Poe books that I want to. I'm still currently reading this, and I'm absolutely loving it so far, and I'm so glad that I've been put onto this by Katie from Books and Things, and Kate Howe so they do Victober, and so I just wanted to read something from the Victorian era as well. So that's why I picked that one. But I will do a more in-depth review on her when I have finished reading it. I may end up reading a couple of the stories again, so it may be a couple of weeks before I do it, but I really, really, really enjoy it. So if you've not read anything by Elizabeth Gaskell before, I suggest start with her Gothic tales. They're all by her. There's no other authors in it, but they're not. I'll just say they are Gothic tales. They're just more about bump in the night and, you know, things like being accused of a witch. And there was a story in there about disappearances and how people disappear and all that sort of stuff. And whether it's through misadventure, murder, or whatever. But yeah, and then there was. You know, there's also one about Poor Claire's, I think it's called, where one of the women is searching for her daughter and curses and all that sort of stuff. So there's a really good mix of stories in this. As I said, I will go into more depth once I'm finished reading it, and then I will definitely know which my favourite stories are. And as I said, at the moment, it's the first one is Lois the Witch, and then I think that's what it's called, and Paul Claire's was my second one, and they're quite long, so they're more of a lengthy short story novella, and I'm not 100% sure how many pages because I was listening to those. But that is it for this week's Friday Classics Mobile Edition. I hope that you're all getting a lot of pages turned today and you're getting some reading in. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to keep driving and going to pick up my daughter, and fingers crossed that my car doesn't break down today as it did yesterday. So yeah, anyway, have a great day, everybody. Don't forget to keep turning those pages, and I will see you all again next time.